Now, how to stay calm in the middle of a crisis, or how to deal with everyday stress, or how to improve your health despite aging and other stressors of life? Well, I found my answers to these questions in yoga. Hello, my name is Bibi. I'm a certified yoga teacher, and today I'm speaking on behalf of the Iyengar Yoga Association of Vancouver. I hope you will feel inspired to start or continue yoga practice by meeting and learning from our teachers and students. We are running this series of interviews and invite you for a dialogue. Please write your questions in the section below with your comments, and we will be happy to answer them next time we meet here. I have invited today Sarah Godfrey. Sarah lives in Belterrico housing on Bowen Island with her husband Mike. They have two adult daughters, Annie and Una. Sarah was introduced to yoga while backpacking for 14 months through Southeast Asia. In India, she attended some meditation retreats. She began her Iyengar yoga classes with Norma Hodge and then Susan Bull when she moved to Vancouver in 1983. Sarah co-directed the Yoga Moves studio in North Vancouver for 12 years and has taught for over 25 years. She's been fortunate to attend classes with the Iyengars both in India and Canada and with many senior Iyengar teachers. Hello, Sarah.
Hello.
Thank you for being on this call.
Oh, it's nice to be here.
Thank you for your time. As you know, this is the first series of interviews, and I start with the standard number of 2-3 questions, and then we will see if that will trigger curiosity, and we will hear some more questions from the audience. And my first question is, so why people come to a yoga studio from your experience? What problems they seek to solve? What are their reasons, needs?
Well, I think they come for a whole myriad of reasons. Sometimes it's obvious, it's a health reason. Their doctor might have said, oh, I strongly recommend you take yoga. They might have, high blood pressure or getting over an injury. So it could be a very practical reason, There's also, I think for a lot of people, they've heard about yoga for years and they're curious, they don't really, they've heard about it, but maybe they don't know too much about it. So there might be people just going for curiosity's sake. Or as I say, the doctor recommends it. And then other people now, I find a lot of younger people, they're very fit, they're very physically fit and active, all kinds of sports and that, but they know that yoga can balance off some of that very active lifestyle. It does bring a balance physically, to whatever they're doing, but also I think just to sort of balance their everything, their health, their emotional life, it brings balance. So I think sort of those reasons. And then some people might come, they do know a bit about yoga, but they want to learn more, and they know there's the spiritual aspect to it too. So it covers such a broad perspective, really. So I think, and I think with the Iyengar yoga, it's such an interesting journey as you start. It seems so, kind of maybe a little more formal than some. There's so much yoga out there now, and it depends on your teacher and et cetera, but I think if it connects with people, it really connects. They just go, wow, there's something here, and then from there they hopefully stick with it.
Wow, so there is the whole spectrum of different reasons, right? So what I hear is starting from the physical needs, if people were injured, and I heard a lot of people would come after horrible, serious accidents, and also, but physically fit people would like to balance that with their intense cardio or workout sessions, right? So they start from stretching, but then maybe hopefully they discover the spiritual reason for the spiritual development. And so different, so you're seeing so many students in so many years, and very interesting observation. I hope that one of these reasons will resonate with our audience, with whoever is watching this video, or maybe you can write down your reason in the comments below, and we would like to learn about that. So let's, my second question, Sarah, is about the benefits of staying and being consistent with the yoga practice? Because in the beginning people are maybe we very curious about, and they start to practice, but we see, and with my only few years of practice and teaching, and I observe that there is a pattern that uh, some people stay, some people leave. So what are the benefits if they will hear about the benefits of being consistent with the practice?
Well, I think when people have stuck with it a long time, like there's a lot, a lot of Iyengar people that I started with or that started before me, and they're still at it. Like it's amazing, and I think, and I think it just, in the bigger picture, the longer term people, it adds such a richness to their lives. It's almost hard to articulate, really. Um, and your whole life sort of without knowing it, but it does shape your life. It really does, and it transforms it. But at first you don't really feel that, or I think it's it's subtle, but it does penetrate. One of my Mr. Iyengar words, he loves the word penetrate, and it does, slowly but surely. And then I think, just again on a practical level, people, they feel physically better. They start, feeling stronger and a little more fit and a little more agile and flexible. So I think there's kind of the payoff can be pretty quick, just physically, being able to move a little more, efficiently and effectively. Um, and then, over time, if you stick with it, you start to, I don't want to say bottomless pit, but it's a bottomless pond. I mean, the longer you stick with it, the more things come up. It's you notice things, your tendencies, or you discover, you think, geez, why am I just getting this now? I've been at it for, so things keep creeping up over and over. One's limitations, one's tendencies, but the good stuff too, not just, so it's never dull. And maybe, I mean, I'm sure that's with all yoga practices and traditions, but certainly in the Iyengar method, we're just constantly learning and sort of keeping it fresh. And I think that's one of the things about the consistency, or with practices, it doesn't get dull. It gets, and this, the variety of poses, and and the approach, how many ways to do the same pose. That's the beauty of Iyengar yoga. I think it's, you could do one pose and have 6 different ways to do it. So it's it's really ongoing. And yeah, so I don't know if that answers it, but yeah, that's sort of what I was about to say.
Yeah, yeah. I was it reminded me also myself about the learning curve, right? So this is what excites you, and when you attend workshops with different teachers, the pose that you think that like Trikonasana, but I was quite fascinated to learn that there is a whole book written just about one pose, and that every teacher will come up with some new way to approach it, like really, as you said, the right word, penetrated, like going deeper into some levels that we don't see with our own eyes, but the body responds in a different way if you approach the asana in a different way, right? So that's the learning curve of going deeper into some asanas, but also going to more difficult or complex poses.
Yeah, and I think, say Trikonasana, whatever, like you could do it, 100 times, 1,000 times, but it's almost like your body, when you're learning, it can only go so far. So, I mean, even if you're very flexible, stiff or flexible, it's like, and gradually the instructions or the penetration or the repetition, it's probably back to a cellular place or something. It's kind of, okay, or today it feels this way, tomorrow it doesn't feel like, so it's really interesting, how you can take the same pose and just re-examine it. So, they talk about in Iyengar yoga sometimes being a little bit like being in a laboratory. There is that sort of science aspect to it. You're examining, you're questioning, and it's neat because, yeah, so I still, there might be one word I hear from a teacher now, I go, oh, right, and I've probably heard it before, like, but you forget about it, or at the time it didn't resonate so much. Now it does, and then maybe I'll forget about it again. But yeah, so anyhow, so the practice just is never ending.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like we are every day is different. Like we have good days, we have bad days, and as you said, and the body actually gives us some feedback. It says, oh no, it's, and you say, what's wrong? Like why this asana that I've been doing for so many years is difficult today. Like my headstand feels different today, and I'm all shaky, and it gives some, body communicate, it gives some feedback, right, to us, like, what state we are. So we build more mindfulness, maybe, and
Yeah.
awareness of ourselves, of what's going on in our life, and with everything is outside as well.
Yes. And I think yoga does make one feel alive ultimately and connected. I think even if you're having a bad day or with this whole COVID thing, right? Um,
Hmm.
we're so lucky to have yoga in our lives. Like I just think yeah, it's been a huge plus. And so I think, yeah, boy, we're really fortunate.
How did it help you? What do you mean by especially these days with
Well, with COVID,
yeah.
for me, I was very fortunate because I was teaching in North Van. So we closed when we moved to Bowen, we closed our little studio in North Van, Susan and I, and so we came to Bowen, and then I was lucky to teach in North Van mostly at a dance studio, Driftwood Dance, Capilano Road. So they were great. They accommodated us. We brought all our props there, lots of props, stuck. They were so good to us. And then COVID came down and everything just basically shut down. And so, yeah, so I was a bit at loose ends. And first it was kind of fun for a couple of weeks. You think, okay, this is the big pause. And then finally we realized we couldn't go back to the studio for a while. And so I was like many people or students or teachers who'd never heard of the word Zoom. But a friend of mine was teaching some Zoom yoga, not an Iyengar teacher, and so I thought, okay, I'll try out her classes, and then I remember thinking, well, I could do that, I'm not a techie person, but I think I could manage that. And then I was amazed how my students, and they're mostly middle aged, give or take a bit, but I was amazed how soon they hopped on board because I think everybody was needing something. This was early April, and everybody was in a bit of shock globally, and it sort of kept us connected and gave me a purpose every day to sort of, okay, I've got to get my act together and hang in there, and so yeah, so it was quite remarkable to be able to continue yoga,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I took other classes too, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't don't stop being surprised of the flexibility of our mind, and how if we really need something, we will just go and learn it, try it, maybe fail it, but we'll still not giving up, and the technologies are on our side. So yeah, yeah. And I'm also was feeling that with regular yoga practices, even online, is totally different experiences, but still it is better something than nothing.
Yeah.
And to have these practices and direct workshops delivered from Pune, from India, that was also something remarkable.
Yeah, that's remarkable. And for me, yeah, just seeing the students, even if they're only in little squares, it's
Yeah.
high and high. And the fun thing is a lot of them just came once a week, which is quite typical. A few of them came twice. And now they come a few times a week if I'm doing it. So my classes aren't super long or anything, but it's the consistency, and I'm being really impressed. And then they say they feel stronger. They like, we're all benefiting from it. And so again, just so grateful that
Yeah,
we
feeling
have this.
more grounded, going back into your breathing. And I don't that's kind of, for me, it's always the self-check, in the beginning of the day and the end of the day with pranayama practice, is like, like a self-check with my awareness and
Yeah,
groundedness. And yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It definitely became, as you said, penetrated. It just becomes part of your life, and you cannot imagine it without it. I wanted to ask you, Sarah, a question about the your journey. So How did I've mentioned that in the bio a little bit, but if you could tell us some fascinating stories that you remember. How did your yoga journey start? How did you decided to become a yoga teacher, and why maybe younger?
Well, as I mentioned, so I went backpacking with just a girl I'd met at university, a friend. We met at university, and then we lived together in apartments with other friends, and then we always said, oh, one day let's go on a trip. And we really didn't mind where we went. We just wanted to, backpack, and we decided on sort of Asia, India, Southeast Asia, India, and we thought we had enough money. We thought we would go for 4 months, and we went. We went in 1981, and that's when the Vietnamese boat people were coming to Canada. And so we went on a flight. It was a refugee flight, just going one way. We went on sort of the empty plane going, and then they would bring back the refugees. So we just bought one-way tickets, and 4 months turned into 14 because you travel and you get cheaper and cheaper. And then when we were in Sri Lanka, so we went through different countries. In Sri Lanka, we signed up for a 10-day Vipassana meditation retreat. And I'd never meditated a day in my life. And we were taken to the sort of the jungles of Sri Lanka, to this Buddhist hermitage. And we really, we had the books to take, but we had really no idea what we were in for. And we knew that there was going to be no, it was very basic, no talking, no reading, no writing, and all that stuff. But the hardest part was the sitting, because I'd never sat before, cross-legged for hours. And I'm trying to think, I think back on it, there might have been an old cushion they gave us, but certainly we didn't have props, and so you're meditating on sore knees and backs for about 10 days. So that was sort of, and after that I thought, oh, no more of that stuff. And then when we got to India, it just, there was all these just amazing places that we kept sort of bumping into. And so we eventually did travel to different ashrams and stay. But we did go to Pune because my mom, my parents lived on Gabriel Island, and she had written and said she'd done yoga before, but I sort of thought it was neat what she was doing, but I didn't take it too seriously. And she had wrote me a nice letter and said, oh, she's doing this new yoga on Gabriel Island called Iyengar Yoga. So, and the teacher was in Pune. So we were in India. We thought, well, we'll just, go to Pune. So we went to Pune, and we saw Mr. Iyengar, B.K.S. Iyengar, in his courtyard with his I don't know, it was a grandchild. You never know. I'm trying to think, would it have been Abhijata? I don't know. I haven't done the math. Anyhow, one of the grandchildren. And at the time there was a intensive there. They used to do intensive sort of 3 weeks at a time. And there was a group from South Africa there. And we went in sort of ready to sign up and take some yoga classes. And they were a bit shocked. They said, do you know what this is? Because we would have taken the general classes at the Institute. And anyhow, these women, in a sense, sort of talked us out of it. And I think it was good, because I think we would have lasted about a day, and then, because we would have worked directly under him in the classes, and we weren't ready for it. We were just sort of a couple of backpackers, and anyhow, we did take some yoga in Pune, and then some other, we stayed quite a bit longer, and then traveled up through the rest of India, etc. So that was sort of my journey. And but I did, it was that heard of that, Iyengar sort of was sticking with me, that term and that name. And so when we finished our trip and I came home, I came back, I stayed with my parents. I was a little bit of a lost soul, I think, when you're gone for a long time. You're kind of had your world sort of blown apart a bit, because you've seen a lot of things, and I wasn't sure what to do. So I stayed at Gabriola for 3 months when I returned. And then I would go with my mom to her seniors class. And she was only in her mid 60s, I think. But and that's where I met Norma Hodge. And Norma would have been one of the first Canadian teachers to go to Pune. And Norma was quite a strict teacher. And I remember my mom saying, bringing me in the first day, and here's my daughter, Sarah, Norma, and we shook hands or whatever. And my mom said, oh, Sarah's just come back from India. And Norma sort of looked me in the eye and said, you don't have to go to India to learn yoga. And she was right. She was really right. So anyhow, I did some, yoga with her. And then when finally I knew I've got to get a life back together. So I moved to Vancouver, Norma recommended, she said, try yoga with Susan Bull. And that's what I did.
And this is when you decided to become a teacher?
No. So then I was just a student for
Okay.
several years, but I was a keen student. I wasn't any good, I really don't. I mean, I think everything hurt. It wasn't easy, but the first feelings, endorphins, the feelings so fabulous that I'd never experienced those feelings before. Sort of highs really from doing this. I can't imagine what the poses look like, but. And then Susan, after about 4 years, in those days, it was by apprenticeship. It was a little, so that's sort of how it was. You were a 2-year apprenticeship. And she asked me, did I want to, so Susan came under the sort of lineage of Maureen Carruthers. And I did quite a bit of work, quite a few workshops with Maureen over the years. And anyhow, so I said, no, I don't want to be a teacher. I don't want to be a teacher. And then Susan said, it's okay. We'll just take it easy. It's very organic. And so I sort of crept in and just started that way. So, it was not me wanting to teach at all. It was a slow process.
Interesting. I'm so fascinated to hear your story, Sarah. I think starting from the 4 months travel journey ended up into 14 months, which is more than a year, being away from home and traveling in somewhere on the opposite side of the planet. And it looks to me like you had the chain of very beautiful coincidences or events that you just by any chance you didn't meet and ended up in any ashram, but you ended up with Iyengar practice, and then it's continued here in Vancouver. And it reminded me so well that when what you said, that you don't have to go to India to to practice and to study yoga, because I myself went to India and stayed in an ashram that was before my introduction to Iyengar practice. And it was not like it was interesting journey. It was curious, like more of the curiosity kind of a thing. But then I came back home, and this is where I looked around and I found a younger tradition that really stick to me. So we actually look sometimes far, right? And when we come back home and we find it just near and in our next door,
Right.
because that we can follow for the rest of our lives. And very last question, I would like to keep this conversation short and sweet, so that usually our everyone now is busy, so we want to keep it short, so that to keep an interest. But then we will continue with the next interview, hopefully soon. My very last question: if you would be asked to give only one advice to the audience, what would you say?
I thought about, I think, what would I say? I would say, have a bit of trust, a bit of faith in oneself. I guess that's what I'd say. And I think, and I'd like to think again that somehow has filtered through from doing yoga, because there's so much, we want to be informed. We want to keep, make an informed decision and be, abreast of all the news, everything out there. But sometimes there's so much out there that we kind of lose sight of our own conviction, or and even if we're wrong, even if we, maybe make mistakes and whatever, I still think there's that sense of having a bit of faith, a bit of trust in one's own point of view or perspective. And I don't mean, tough about it or anything, but just not to lose oneself, which it can be easy to do, I think, nowadays, with so much out there. You get pulled in 1,000 directions. And I think, just a little bit of faith and trust, and sort of to the bigger picture, to the bigger perspective.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. That reminds me, that what Mr. Iyengar talks about, the core, that we always start from the physical practice, and we talk a lot about stamina and keeping the balance. So even if it's, it can be metaphorical balance, but also physical balance. So, like, for example, going into the tree pose and you not using the wall, or even going into the inversions and not using the wall. So keeping that core, which is the physical core, but also emotional or mental, right? So the trust in yourself and being mostly committed to your own values, and not getting lost in, as you say, and we are bombarded in
Ah,
this world of information, and yeah.
yeah. And I'm guilty like everybody, I have a phone and you get caught up in some little wretched thing, and then I think this is crazy, turn it off, put it away. But
Mhm.
we are, it's just the way it is out there. So we really do have to kind of, restrain or constrain ourselves a bit, I think, to keep a little bit of, connect and to keep together.
Totally, totally. Well, Sarah, thank you very much for your time again. And hopefully, it's our first meeting, but not the last one. And I would like to remind everyone, please, so subscribe to our channel and let's start this dialogue. I would appreciate if you write down your answers in your questions and your comments in the section below. And we will be happy to answer your questions. And thank you for listening. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thanks, baby. Thank you.